When Princess Beatrice arrived at Clarence House expecting a long-awaited honor, she was instead handed silence, then a whisper that Princess Charlotte, not her, had been chosen to inherit Diana's private tiara collection. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was generational. A public snub cloaked in secrecy. But what forces made this shocking handover possible? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For Beatrice, this was more than a ceremonial disappointment. It was a brutal reminder that no matter how much she had tried to rehabilitate the York name after years of bearing the fallout from her father's disgrace, she was still, in the eyes of the senior royals, expendable. Quietly and without ceremony, she had prepared herself for this moment for months. The whispers within court circles, the subtle body language at Windsor receptions, the lack of inclusion in key Jubilee plans, it all pointed to a shift in favor. Yet nothing could prepare her for this. The tiara collection was no ordinary inheritance. These were not just jewels. They were symbols worn by Diana in moments of history, shadowed in heartbreak and triumph, etched into the memory of a nation that adored her. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Beatrice had long believed she would one day wear them not as a monarch, but as a tribute, a gesture of continuity. The announcement came just 60 seconds before the press release, leaving no room for preparation, no chance to shield herself from the humiliation. It had been deliberately timed, whether to control headlines or to diminish confrontation, no one knew for sure. But the impact was undeniable. At Windsor, where she had been attending a private reception, Beatrice was visibly shaken. Aides described her as ashen, one reportedly offering to escort her away from the cameras before she composed herself behind the closed doors of the Queen's drawing room. There was no public statement, no official comment. The palace media office offered only a vague confirmation that the inheritance had been finalized in accordance with the family's internal legacy framework. But internally, chaos erupted. One of Beatrice's aides, furious at what they called a controlled silencing, leaked that the decision had been pushed through by forces above Charles, forces with roots in a deeper, older system of influence. Whispers of the legacy chamber, or more ominously, a resurgent crown chamber, began to swirl among insiders. The idea that this was more than a symbolic choice, more than a father's favor, began to take hold. Beatrice, blindsided, was not merely denied jewels. She had been locked out of a legacy. But to understand why Princess Charlotte was chosen, we must peel back layers of secrecy that begin not with her but with Diana herself. Buried inside Diana's personal jewelry, safe unseen since her death, was a velvet pouch sealed with her personal crest. Its contents had long been speculated about, but when the pouch was quietly opened last month in the presence of a Crown Chamber official, it upended every assumption about who Diana saw as her true legacy. The pouch had been stored deep within Kensington archives, untouched for decades. A quiet directive had ensured it remained sealed, marked with a handwritten note, to be opened when lineage and duty collide. But following an unannounced audit of Diana's remaining personal effects, reportedly initiated by an aide close to Princess Anne, curiosity shifted. Inside was a concealed inventory, meticulously penned by Diana herself, itemizing not only the tiaras she had received and worn, but also the meanings she had privately attached to each. Alongside it, a note, a single haunting paragraph that read, "May these pieces one day grace a future queen through the claws, purest maternal bloodline. Let her bear them not in vanity, but in strength." The implications were seismic. Royal archivists and select chamber officials were stunned. That one sentence changed everything. The phrase "purest maternal bloodline" bypassed traditional expectations of succession. It pointed deliberately or not toward the senior female royals of Diana's generation, nor even the seniority of service. It pointed to her descendant. And in the eyes of some, that could only mean Princess Charlotte. As the direct granddaughter of Diana, born of the son who had carried her grief most publicly, Charlotte became the immediate symbolic heir to more than just appearance she became. Suddenly, the vessel of Diana's emotional and symbolic legacy. For Princess Beatrice, the revelation was nothing short of devastating. She had quietly hoped that a part of Diana's private collection might be offered to her, not for power or position, but as a silent redemption. A restoration of honor to the York line, scarred for years by scandal and isolation. Beatrice had once spoken privately to friends about how she admired Diana not just as a royal, but as a woman who endured. The idea that Diana might have considered her even partly worthy of carrying something forward had kept that hope alive. That hope now lay crushed beneath a sentence written years before Charlotte was even born. The most shocking part? The discovery was never intended to go public. No press release, no official entry into royal records. The pouch's unsealing had been witnessed only by a handful of senior aides, and yet the decision to act on its contents had already begun reshaping internal hierarchy. Charles's formal endorsement of Charlotte's inheritance only came after this pouch had been quietly presented to him, and he wasn't the only one moved to action. Camilla, reportedly furious that Diana's name was once again overshadowing her own presence, attempted to stall the Crete reveal. That effort failed. But it didn't stop tensions from exploding inside the family. In the days following the discovery, fractures began to show. Schedules shifted. Meetings were cancelled. Members of the royal household who had long operated in stable routines suddenly found themselves caught between loyalty and uncertainty. Diana's words had reached from the grave not as whispers of nostalgia, but as commands that threatened to rewrite expectation. But Diana's wishes were only one part of the story, because another force had quietly returned: the Crown Chamber. Unbeknownst to most of the public, the powerful yet secretive Crown Chamber, a body dormant since Queen Elizabeth's final days, was reactivated to weigh in on a singular matter: succession of symbolic legacy. And with it, Diana's jewels became more than heirlooms. They became a tool of influence. The reawakening of the Crown Chamber was not announced, not recorded in the court circular, and not referenced in any press releases. But inside the walls of Clarence House, a select group of hereditary advisors and blood royals gathered under a veil of confidentiality. This body, designed originally to guide the sovereign on matters of ceremonial precedence and spiritual continuity, had last convened during the twilight hours of Queen Elizabeth's reign to advise on the future of the Duchy of Cornwall. Now, it had returned for something far more personal. It was Princess Anne who reportedly triggered the reconvening, alarmed by the implications of Diana's handwritten note and what she called a dangerous precedent of sentimental monarchy. Alongside her sat the Duke of Norfolk, custodian of state ceremonies, and Lady Sarah Chatto, Diana's own niece, each carrying their own interpretation of what legacy truly meant. The discussion was not civil. It was brutal. On one side stood the defenders of Windsor stability, arguing that titles, jewels, and ceremonial symbols must remain aligned with duty and rank, not emotion. On the other stood those invoking the Spencer legacy, citing Diana's words as more than sentiment, as directive. Princess Eugenie, breaking from her usual quiet, rose in defense of her sister. She presented Beatrice's case with passion, speaking of service, silence, and the need to heal past wounds. But her appeal fell short. A shadow of resistance, quietly growing against the York branch, was impossible to ignore. When Beatrice's name was placed on the table, it was met with solemn silence, and finally, a formal dismissal not in keeping with the future narrative. By the end of the night, a vote was called. The result: 6-5. The slimmest of margins, but enough. Princess Charlotte was confirmed as the next bearer of Diana's private collection. Not for her current position, but for her projected destiny. She, as a direct female line descendant of Diana, was chosen to carry the emotional weight of a legacy that had long lived in shadows. The Crown Chamber issued a rare written communiqué, carefully worded. Legacy must reflect lineage and future. Sentiment alone must not determine continuity, but where sentiment and sovereignty align, the Crown must recognize its power. The message was clear. The decision had been made not to honor the past, but to shape the future. What made this moment more consequential was the silence that followed. There were no briefings, no acknowledgements. Beatrice was never formally informed by the chamber. The monarchy simply moved forward, leaving her to piece together what had occurred behind closed doors. And while the public remained focused on the optics of tiaras, jewels, and titles, few grasped the seismic political game being played beneath. Because while the Crown Chamber claimed impartiality, their decision had aligned almost too perfectly with a figure whose influence was shifting rapidly behind the scenes. Yet the Crown Chamber's motives may have masked a deeper strategy one, involving the king's rapidly changing stance. King Charles had once promised Prince Andrew's daughters a future restored, but in a shocking reversal, Charles not only approved Charlotte's inheritance, he personally oversaw the transfer. Was this a betrayal, or a last-ditch attempt to secure the monarchy's image? In the drawing rooms of Sandringham, a discreet meeting unfolded. Just 3 attendees. No aides, no notes. Charles, William, and Princess Anne. It was there that the final decision was taken, one that would fracture trust and loyalty beneath the surface of the royal family. The 2 York sisters, once assured of rehabilitation and recognition, were not even informed of the gathering. For the first time in years, they were left entirely outside the circle. The message was unambiguous. Their place within the monarchy was no longer being negotiated, it had been decided. The reversal had been brewing beneath layers of carefully managed optics. Charles, already bruised by mounting backlash over Queen Camilla's exclusive access to crown jewels and her growing presence in ceremonial matters, needed a recalibration. Public confidence was slipping, and internal whispers suggested that the monarchy's future could not hinge on defending the past. He needed an image shift, something that would resonate with younger generations, with those still holding Diana's memory sacred. And so, Princess Charlotte became the emblem of that strategy, a new face bearing a legacy, once mired in tragedy, now rebranded for continuity. The most chilling element was how it was done, not with confrontation, not with public declarations, but with one call. Charles rang Beatrice directly, his voice cold and concise. No apology, no explanation, just a single, unforgettable line. "You have my respect, not my jewels." It was not just a denial, it was a dismissal. A final statement that she, despite years of quiet compliance, would never be part of the inner crown circle. The call lasted less than 2 minutes. What followed revealed the depth of the emotional rupture. Beatrice, reportedly in tears, turned to the one person who had once promised protection, her father, Prince Andrew. In a moment of vulnerability, their conversation was overheard and later leaked, exposing the rawness of their pain. "You said he'd make this right," she whispered, barely composed. Andrew, out of influence and out of favor, had no answer. It wasn't just the jewels. It was the symbolic denial of restoration. The monarchy had decided that redemption for the Yorks was no longer a strategic priority. Behind palace gates, courtiers described the move as calculated, even ruthless. Charles had drawn a line between nostalgia and necessity, and in doing so, he reaffirmed a truth: the monarchy often hides emotion is expendable when the institution is at stake. Beatrice's silence in the days that followed was not weakness, it was restraint. She understood that public outcry would not restore what was never truly promised. But inside the family, fractures deepened. Loyalty, once assumed, had been fractured by ambition. But if Charles was cold, it was William who appeared untouched by sympathy, and perhaps entirely complicit. While the world debated the politics, behind palace gates it was clear. Prince William played a pivotal role in orchestrating the Tiara inheritance, placing his daughter squarely at the center of royal tradition. And beside him, Catherine said nothing. But her silence may have spoken louder than any royal decree. William's fingerprints were everywhere, though few dared acknowledge them outright. For months, he had been meticulously shaping Princess Charlotte's image, cultivating a balance of grace, poise, and restraint. She appeared at select events, always protected, never overexposed. The future queen, but presented with the subtlety of someone above the fray. Until now. Until the moment Diana's jewels were placed into her daughter's name, and the illusion of detachment vanished. It was a move that didn't just elevate Charlotte, it eclipsed everyone else. And no one felt it more than Beatrice. What made it more painful was the precision of the execution. There was no room for ambiguity. This wasn't an accident of timing or an internal miscommunication. It was a deliberate shift of power, and William had overseen every inch of it. The call he made to Beatrice, just hours before the decision became public, was described by an insider as surgical. No apology, no space for dialogue, simply a notification. She had not been chosen. The matter was closed. The voice was courteous, but devoid of warmth. A monarch in waiting, speaking not to family, but to a subject. Catherine's role in this was perhaps even more haunting. Her history with Diana's tiaras was well known. She had worn many, carried their legacy with apparent reverence. And yet, she remained silent. She offered no public comment, no private reassurances, no visible empathy. There was growing speculation within palace circles that Catherine had been torn, caught between honouring her late mother-in-law's memory and protecting her daughter's rising position. But when the final decision was made, she said nothing. That silence echoed. It sent a message to Beatrice, Eugenie, and others watching carefully. The House of Wales had spoken, and it had chosen bloodline over bonds. For Beatrice, the realization was devastating. She had always believed that despite protocol and distance, there was still a measure of loyalty among the next generation. But now, she saw it clearly. The doors had closed. William had secured the narrative. Charlotte, still too young to grasp the magnitude, had become a cornerstone of a reimagined monarchy crafted not just to endure, but to dominate. Beatrice was left on the outside, not just of a decision, but of a future she had once believed she belonged to. And yet, even as Charlotte was crowned, with jewels of legacy, another storm brewed from within the Spencer family. They had stayed silent for years. But not anymore. The Spencer family, guardians of Diana's true legacy, have reportedly issued a private legal memorandum to the palace, claiming parts of the tiara collection were never lawfully transferred to the Windsors. Suddenly, Charlotte's inheritance faced not only emotion but litigation. The re-emergence of the Spencers sent shockwaves through the royal corridors. Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl, and Diana's fiercely protective brother, had long refrained from challenging the Windsors on personal matters. But behind closed doors at Althorpe, he convened a legal team that included not only the family's current barristers, but Diana's own former solicitor, still bound by confidences, but allegedly troubled by discrepancies in Diana's estate resolution. Central to the dispute was the claim that 3 of the most iconic tiaras in the collection, including the one Diana wore on her first overseas tour, had not been gifts or royal transfers, but private loans from the Spencer vault, and that those items, by law, had never been properly absorbed into Windsor control. The implications were staggering. If even part of the claim held weight, it would mean that Charlotte's inheritance, so carefully orchestrated and symbolically potent, rested on legally unstable ground. And the timing of the move was no coincidence. Reports began to swirl that individuals close to Beatrice, outraged by the blatant sidelining, had reached out to the Spencers discreetly, not to orchestrate revenge, but to expose the quiet erasure of truth. Whether Beatrice herself had authorized this contact remained unclear, but her proximity to several former Althorpe staffers suggested the bridge had already been built. In palace circles, the reaction was swift and brutal. Queen Camilla, already bristling at Diana's continued shadow over the family narrative, was said to be livid. She viewed the Spencer intervention as a hostile act, a direct challenge to the king's authority and the stability of the monarchy's image. Privately, she accused Charles Spencer of weaponizing sentiment and undermining unity at a critical moment. But behind her outrage was fear. The reawakening of Spencer influence threatened to unravel the tightrope walk she had spent years perfecting. Still, the palace did not falter publicly. A terse, carefully worded statement was released just hours after news of the memorandum leaked. All property matters related to family legacy remain internal and subject to established protocols. No further comment. The words were meant to project calm, but inside the firm, tensions were boiling. Legal teams were mobilized, Historians consulted. Quiet conversations began about the need to shield Charlotte from the brewing storm, an inheritance that was now entangled in generational conflict, legal ambiguity, and emotional fire. But beneath legal maneuvers and the formal posturing, one truth had begun to crystallize. This was not just about tiaras. It was about the soul of Diana's memory, who owned it, who controlled it, and who had the right to pass it on. And while the Spencers had launched the opening salvo, another figure was already preparing to deliver the most personal challenge yet. But it wasn't just the Spencers challenging Charlotte, it was Beatrice herself, in a haunting appearance at Balmoral. Under grey skies at Balmoral, Princess Beatrice arrived unannounced. No aides, no press, just one envelope. Inside, a personal letter to Charles, and a duplicate of Diana's final unpublicized message to her sons. What she revealed could fracture the family or change nothing at all, but Beatrice had nothing left to lose. Her arrival was not marked in any official records, no photographers, no briefings, and yet, within minutes of stepping inside the estate's private entrance, whispers spread across the corridors. Staff recognized the look, determination painted over devastation. The envelope she carried bore no crest, only Diana's initials in faint ink across the corner. It wasn't a statement. It was an invocation. What lay inside would not be read aloud, not copied, not archived. It would be handed directly to the king, and he would read it alone. According to palace insiders, the letter included a passage long rumoured among Diana's former staff but never confirmed. It read simply, "Jewels are for the silenced. Give them not to those crowned, but to those forgotten." The weight of those words, under the current storm, was unbearable. Beatrice had not come to demand reversal, she had come to remind, to place memory where legacy had turned mechanical. Charles, visibly moved, reportedly read the letter in silence. When he finished, he returned it without a word. No comfort, no comment. Just a lingering stare that said more than any speech could. Prince William refused to meet her. A direct request was made. A second attempt followed. Each declined. Beatrice waited an hour before accepting the refusal. To be shut out by her cousin, once a childhood companion, was not a surprise, but a wound. The door was firmly closed, and she now understood it would not open again. The institution had hardened, and it no longer had space for dissent cloaked in grace. But it was Princess Anne who broke the silence that day. But witnesses described Anne's face afterward as pale, her composure shaken. For a woman known to steel herself through every storm, it was a crack in the armor that hinted at a deeper reckoning, one only Beatrice had triggered. Whether Anne offered comfort, regret, or warning remains one of the day's unanswered questions. Charlotte, meanwhile, was kept entirely away from the confrontation. Shielded by William and Catherine, she remained unaware of what had just passed at the heart of the family's most sacred residence. But even within her young circle, questions were beginning to stir. Why the inheritance came so suddenly? Why her appearances were being so tightly curated? And what, if anything, she was meant to carry beyond the sparkle of diamonds and the weight of royal expectation? And while Charlotte wore the tiaras for the first time at Windsor, another woman had quietly made her move from the shadows. Princess Eugenie had long played the role of peacemaker, but after witnessing her sister's heartbreak, she made a choice. Late-night meetings, hushed discussions with aides once loyal to Queen Elizabeth, and a bold plan to restore Beatrice's honour. Was a new royal rebellion about to begin? What began as quiet unease had transformed into something far more deliberate. Eugenie, known for her warmth and diplomacy, had been notably distant from the Waleses in recent weeks. Official appearances were minimised, private invitations politely declined, and behind the scenes, she was building something. Sources close to the palace confirmed a string of discreet meetings, one with Lady Louise Windsor, another with Sarah Chatto, and at least two with archival officials once entrusted with the late Queen Elizabeth's most sensitive documents. The subject? A forgotten clause buried deep within the Queen's personal legacy, files something referred to in internal notes as dual stewardship. It was, reportedly, a proposal that allowed for ceremonial balance between two female heirs, should a conflict of legacy arise between lineage and service. It was not legally binding. It was never announced. But to Eugenie, it was a blueprint for justice. Her plan, to reintroduce Beatrice into the royal fold through the creation of a ceremonial title tied not to succession, but to memory, a role forged to preserve the values. Diana stood for empathy, resilience, and emotional visibility. A role that could be elevated in public perception, awarded the kind of reverence Beatrice had long been denied. It was bold, risky, and entirely outside the current royal structure. But it carried the weight of moral authority. When the proposal reached Beatrice, however, her response was gut-wrenching. She declined. Not out of bitterness, but pain. "I don't want symbols," she told her sister, voice breaking. "I wanted her memory." For Beatrice, no title could undo the erasure. No invented honor could fill the absence left by Diana's jewels, by the silence of Charles, or the cold dismissal from William. She had not sought elevation. She had only hoped to belong, and now that hope had vanished. But Eugenie did not stop. Her refusal to let Beatrice's pain be swept into history became her mission. To aides, she reportedly said, "If they won't honor her, I will. I'll make them remember." And in that moment, something shifted. Eugenie was no longer the observer. She had become the architect of memory. Determined to reclaim the narrative from those who had silenced it, this quiet resistance began to ripple. Trusted allies resurfaced. Old Windsor traditions were re-examined. Even whispers from staff close to the Queen Consort suggested discomfort with how rapidly the institution had pivoted toward image over inheritance. Eugenie had tapped into something deeper than protocol grief, injustice, and the quiet power of remembrance. She wasn't seeking revenge. She was building a legacy of her own. But just as the dust seemed to settle, the youngest voice of all finally spoke. She is only a child. But in a rare, unscripted moment during a private school charity event, Princess Charlotte addressed the subject no one expected her to acknowledge. What she said, delivered with innocence and quiet sorrow, left the nation in stunned silence. The event was meant to be a modest affair, attended by parents, students, and a few trusted press outlets. But in a quiet corner of the stage, after being thanked for wearing one of her grandmother Diana's famous tiaras to raise awareness for a children's hospital fundraiser, Charlotte leaned into the microphone and said softly, "I didn't ask for them. I just wear them." The words, simple and unpolished, struck with more force than any royal statement. Within minutes, clips of the moment began circulating across social media. Comment threads flooded with disbelief, sympathy, and reflection. Some saw it as a child grappling with the burden of legacy. Others saw it as something deeper, a signal that even she understood the weight those jewels carried went far beyond sparkle. Within the palace, the reaction was immediate. Catherine, who had been watching from a side room, reportedly broke down in tears. Not from shame or fear, but from the realization that her daughter had inherited not just the jewels, but the emotional complexity they carried. That moment, raw and unrehearsed, reshaped conversations behind closed doors. Quietly, future tiara appearances were re-evaluated. No longer would Charlotte be positioned as the sole standard-bearer. Plans were set in motion to create more shared moments with other female royals, softening the isolation, distributing the symbolism. And somewhere in a quiet part of London, Princess Beatrice received a copy of the footage. According to a family friend, she watched it twice, then sat down and wrote a letter by hand. The note was brief but powerful. "They suit you, and I know she'd be proud." No royal seal, no ceremonial envelope. Just a message between women tied not by bloodline, but by loss. That letter marked a shift. The wound, though still deep, began to close. Not erased, but no longer ignored. Inside royal halls, tension still lingers. There are divisions that may never be healed, roles that may never be reassigned. But something changed that day. The monarchy, so often defined by rigidity and silence, was forced to pause and listen to a child's honesty, a sister's defiance, and a mother's tears. What began as a quiet inheritance had erupted into a storm of legacy, pain, and reckoning. And yet, in the most unexpected moment, it found its peace. And so, beneath jewels forged in legacy and grief, a new chapter begins, one written not by decree, but by feeling. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.